The night was colder than usual, and rain poured down like it had no intention of stopping. The narrow streets were nearly empty, except for a few cars splashing through puddles. A young woman walked home slowly, holding a broken umbrella that did little to keep her dry. Her shoes were soaked, her uniform damp, and her back ached from a long shift at the diner. She worked 12 hours that day and her feet felt like they were on fire, but she didn't complain. She had learned long ago that complaining never changed anything. She lived in a small, dim apartment at the edge of the city. It wasn't much, just one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, and a bathroom where the water heater barely worked. But it was hers, and she worked hard every month to keep it that way. Rent day was only a few days away, and she wasn't sure she'd make it this time. She had already counted her tips twice that week, hoping they would somehow look bigger the second time. They didn't. As she turned onto the last street before home, she saw something unusual. Near an old bus stop under the flickering yellow light, a man stood with a little girl beside him. Both were drenched from head to toe. The man looked anxious, checking his phone again and again as if waiting for help that never came. The little girl hugged a small backpack and shivered. The woman hesitated for a moment. She had learned to be careful. The city wasn't exactly a safe place for strangers, but there was something about that child, the way her teeth chattered, the way she rubbed her tiny hands together, that pulled at her heart. She walked closer, her steps splashing lightly in the puddles. "Hey," she called softly. "Are you two okay?" The man looked up, startled at first. "Oh, hi. Our car broke down just outside town," he explained. "I called for a tow, but they said it might take until morning. The motels nearby are all full." He sighed and looked down at the girl. "I didn't know what else to do. My daughter's freezing." The girl sneezed, and that was all it took for the woman to make up her mind. She didn't have much, but she couldn't just walk past them. "You can come to my place for the night," she said quietly. "It's small, but it's warm and dry." The man blinked, surprised. "Are you sure?" "You don't even know us," she nodded. "I know you're cold. That's enough." The walk to her apartment was only 5 minutes, but in the heavy rain it felt longer. By the time they reached the building, everyone was dripping wet. Inside, the apartment was tiny, with peeling paint on the walls and mismatched furniture, but it was clean. The woman turned on the old heater near the window, grabbed a few towels, and handed them over. The girl smiled shyly. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft and tired. "You're welcome, sweetheart," the woman replied gently. "There's a blanket on the couch. You can dry off there." The man nodded gratefully. "Thank you, really, I don't know what we would have done." The woman smiled faintly and shrugged. "It's nothing. Just one night." After they changed into dry clothes, the man and his daughter had a spare set in the backpack. The woman went to the kitchen. She didn't have much in her cupboard. A few cans of soup, some noodles, and a loaf of bread that was close to going stale. She sighed, then started boiling water anyway. When she came back out, the little girl was already half asleep under the blanket. The man sat quietly on the edge of the couch, looking around the room. He noticed the small stack of bills on the table and a note from the landlord marked, "Final Notice." He pretended not to see it. The woman brought over 3 bowls of soup, dividing what little she had. "It's not much," she said, smiling awkwardly, "but it'll warm you up." The man took the bowl with both hands. "It's more than enough." "Thank you." They ate quietly, the only sound in the room being the rain against the window and the soft hum of the heater. The woman felt a strange comfort in their presence. She didn't know these people, but somehow it felt less lonely having them there. The little girl finished her soup, yawned, and curled up under the blanket. Within minutes, she was asleep. The man watched her, his eyes soft. "She's been through a lot," he said quietly. "It's been a rough year." The woman nodded. "It's been a rough one for a lot of us," she replied. He looked at her, curious. "You live here alone?" "Yeah, been on my own since my mom passed a few years ago. I work at a diner downtown. It's not great, but it pays most of the bills." She laughed a little, though it wasn't really funny. "Well, most of the time." He nodded, not pushing further. There was a quiet respect between them, a sense that both understood struggle without needing to explain it. After a few minutes, the woman stood. "You can take the bed," she said. "It's more comfortable. I'll sleep out here on the floor." The man shook his head immediately. No, we can sleep on the floor. You've already done enough," but she insisted. "Your little girl shouldn't sleep on the floor. It's cold." Take the bed, please. In the end, he agreed, though reluctantly. She set up a blanket on the floor near the heater, using her jacket as a pillow. As she lay there, she could hear the soft breathing of the child and the occasional creak of the old pipes. It wasn't easy falling asleep, but she felt oddly at peace. Around midnight, her phone buzzed. She quietly answered, careful not to wake them. It was her landlord again. His tone was sharp and impatient. I can't wait any longer, he said. You need to pay at least half the rent by tomorrow, or I'll have to find another tenant. Please, she whispered. I just need a few more days. I'm expecting my paycheck at the end of the week. I've heard that before, he muttered. You have until tomorrow evening. That's it. She hung up slowly, her eyes burning. She didn't realize that the man had quietly woken up and heard part of the conversation. He didn't say a word, pretending to be asleep. When morning came, the storm had passed. Sunlight poured through the window, making the room look a little warmer, a little kinder. The woman was already up, making coffee with the last spoonful she had left. The man and his daughter joined her, both smiling. The little girl hugged her tightly. Thank you for helping us, she said. You're really nice. The woman smiled and hugged her back. You're welcome, sweetheart. You take care of your dad, okay? The man looked at her with genuine gratitude. I don't know how to thank you. You didn't even know us, yet you opened your home. She shrugged, embarrassed. You looked like you needed help. That's all. He reached for his wallet, pulling out a few bills. Please, at least let me give you something for the food and the trouble. But she shook her head. No, it's okay. I didn't do it for money. He hesitated. Still, I owe you, she smiled faintly. Just promise me you'll help someone else one day. That's enough. The man looked at her, something unreadable in his expression. He nodded slowly. I will. I promise. After breakfast, they gathered their things. The man wrote down her address, pretending it was just in case he needed to return something they borrowed. A towel, he said. But deep down, he knew he wanted to remember her. The little girl waved as they left. Bye, Miss A. I'll miss you. Bye, sweetheart, she said, waving from the doorway. When they were gone, the apartment felt emptier than before. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the quiet space. Then she sighed and began cleaning up, humming softly to herself. She didn't know if she'd ever see them again. That evening, she went back to work at the diner. The noise of clinking dishes, the smell of coffee, and the chatter of customers filled the air. But her mind kept drifting to the man and his little girl. She hoped they had found a safe place to stay. As she wiped down tables, her coworker noticed her quiet mood. You okay? He asked. Yeah, she said with a small smile. Just thinking about something. When she finally got home that night, the apartment was silent again. She turned off the lights and lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling. She didn't have much, no family, no savings, not even enough food for tomorrow. But she felt something different that night. It was the feeling of having done the right thing, even when it wasn't easy. Somewhere in the city, the man she had helped sat in a hotel room, his daughter sleeping beside him. He couldn't stop thinking about the woman who had opened her home to two strangers without hesitation. In his world, people rarely did things without expecting something in return. But she did. He looked at the small piece of paper in his hand with her name and address written on it. He smiled faintly. We'll find a way to thank her, Lily, he whispered. I promise. The little girl stirred and mumbled softly. Miss A is nice. Yes, he said quietly, glancing out the window at the city lights. She really is, and somewhere across town, in that small apartment with the broken heater and the peeling paint, the young woman slept peacefully, unaware that her one small act of kindness on a rainy night was about to change her life forever. The next few days passed quietly for her. Life went back to the same routine. Early mornings, long hours at the diner, and tired walks home through crowded streets. Her co-workers teased her about how much time she spent worrying about everyone else. She always smiled and said, I just do what I can. They didn't know she was fighting every day just to keep her small apartment. That week felt harder than usual. The rent deadline was closing in, and she hadn't managed to collect enough money. The landlord's words kept echoing in her head. Tomorrow evening, or I'll have to find another tenant. She tried to ignore the thought while she poured coffee for customers and wiped down counters. But the fear sat heavy in her chest. One slow afternoon, while she was cleaning the tables near the window, She noticed a little girl standing outside. The child pressed her face against the glass and grinned. It took her a second to recognize the smile. It was the same girl she had helped during the storm. Before she could step outside, the girl ran back to a tall man waiting near the street. He waved politely, and for a moment their eyes met. It was the man and his daughter. He looked different this time, cleaner clothes, a calm smile, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. When she finished her shift, she walked outside and saw them waiting by the corner. "Hey," she said, smiling. "I didn't expect to see you again." The man smiled back. "We wanted to thank you properly. Lily wouldn't stop asking if we could visit you." The little girl giggled. "I told Daddy you make the best soup ever." The woman laughed softly. "It was just canned soup, sweetheart." "It was special," the girl said firmly. They stood on the sidewalk for a while, talking about the weather and the broken car. The man explained that the car had been fixed the next morning and they'd gone back home. He didn't say where home was, and she didn't ask. She was just happy to see they were safe. After a few minutes, the man handed her a small brown bag. "It's not much," he said, "but I wanted to bring you something as a thank you." Inside the bag were groceries, rice, milk, fresh bread, and a few vegetables. She looked up in surprise. "You didn't have to do this." "I wanted to," he said simply. "You helped us when no one else would." Her throat tightened a little. "Thank you, really." They talked a little longer, and then the man said they had to go. Before leaving, he asked, "Are you off tomorrow?" "Yes," she replied. "Why?" he smiled. "We'd like to take you and your friend here," he said, nodding to his daughter, "to lunch. Just as a thank you." No pressure. She hesitated at first. She wasn't used to people doing nice things for her. But the way the girl looked up at her, smiling hopefully, made it hard to say no. "All right," she said finally. "Lunch sounds nice." The next day, they met at a small cafe near the park. She wore her cleanest dress, one she had owned for years but only used on special occasions. When she arrived, the man and his daughter were already there, sitting by the window. Lily waved excitedly. "Miss A, over here." The man stood and pulled out a chair for her. "We're glad you came," he said. The cafe was warm and quiet, filled with the smell of coffee and fresh pastries. They ordered simple meals, sandwiches, soup, and tea. The conversation flowed easily. The girl talked about her school and how she wanted to be an artist when she grew up. The man listened with a soft smile, occasionally glancing at the woman across the table. She told them a bit about her life, how she had grown up in a small town, moved to the city for work, and lost her mother a few years ago. "I've been managing," she said, trying to sound braver than she felt. The man nodded slowly. "You seem like someone who doesn't give up easily." She smiled faintly. "Sometimes that's all you can do, just keep going." When the meal ended, he insisted on paying. She tried to argue but finally gave in. As they walked outside, Lily grabbed her hand and said, "Can we visit your house again sometime?" The woman laughed. "Maybe one day." Before they left, the man handed her a small envelope. "Please," he said, "don't refuse this. It's not charity. Just consider it repayment for your kindness." She frowned, hesitant. "You really don't have to," he smiled gently. "It'll make me feel better, honestly." After they left, she stood by the park bench for a while before opening the envelope. Inside was a short handwritten note that said, "Thank you for your kindness. The world needs more people like you." Beneath the note was a small gift card to a grocery store. Nothing extravagant, but enough to help her get by for a few weeks. She felt tears prick her eyes. No one had done something that thoughtful for her in a long time. That night, she used the card to buy some groceries, fresh fruit, eggs, bread, and a few treats she usually skipped because of the price. She even bought a small chocolate bar and smiled as she ate it slowly, feeling like things might finally be looking up. But the next morning, a loud knock at the door woke her up. It was the landlord. He stood there with his arms crossed, looking impatient. "I gave you extra time," he said. "Do you have the rent?" She swallowed hard. "I'll have it by tomorrow evening." "I promise," he sighed. "All right, tomorrow. No more delays." When he left, she sat on the couch and buried her face in her hands. She was short by nearly $100. Her paycheck would come, but not soon enough. That evening, as she wiped tables at the diner, she saw a familiar car parked across the street. It was sleek and black, very different from the old car she remembered from that rainy night. For a moment, she thought she was mistaken. But then the man stepped out. He came inside and smiled when he saw her. "I hope I'm not bothering you," he said. She laughed nervously. "Of course not. I just didn't expect to see you again." He sat at the counter and ordered coffee. "I had a meeting nearby and thought I'd stop by to say hello." They talked quietly while she worked, sharing small jokes and stories between her tasks. The other staff watched curiously. It wasn't every day a well-dressed man came in just to chat with a waitress. Before leaving, he said, "You mentioned you were looking for better work the other day. Would you be open to something new?" She blinked, surprised. "Something new?" He nodded. "My company has a few openings. Nothing fancy, just administrative work, steady pay, benefits. If you're interested, I can get you an interview." She looked at him, unsure. "Why would you do that for me?" He smiled. "Because you deserve a chance. You helped me when I needed it. Maybe it's my turn now." She hesitated but nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll try." He left his business card on the counter before walking out. She picked it up and turned it over in her hands. His name was printed neatly, followed by the name of a company she vaguely recognized from billboards around town. It looked like something important. That night, she sat at her kitchen table staring at the card. A part of her wanted to believe it was real, but another part whispered that people like her didn't get lucky breaks. She almost threw it away, but something in her gut told her to hold on to it. The next day after her shift, she called the number. The woman who answered already seemed to know who she was. "Yes, we've been expecting your call," the voice said politely. "Can you come in tomorrow morning for an interview?" Her heart raced. "Yes, of course," she said quickly. She hung up and sat back, her hands trembling slightly. She hadn't been on a real interview in years. That night, she ironed her one decent shirt and borrowed a pair of shoes from a coworker. She practiced answering questions in front of the mirror, laughing at how nervous she looked. The next morning, she took the bus downtown to the address written on the card. When she stepped off, she froze. The building in front of her was tall and glassy, with the same company name printed on the entrance. It was much grander than she imagined. Inside, everything was spotless, polished floors, soft lights, people in suits walking briskly through the halls. She felt completely out of place, but she took a deep breath and walked up to the receptionist. "Hi, I'm here for an interview," she said, clutching her small bag. "Of course," the receptionist replied kindly. "Please wait just a moment." A few minutes later, the man appeared, smiling warmly. "You made it," he said. "Come on, I'll show you around." She followed him through the office, amazed by how big everything was. People greeted him respectfully as he passed. She realized then that he wasn't just an employee here. He was someone important. They sat in a quiet meeting room while another woman from HR joined them. The interview was simple, more of a friendly conversation than a test. By the end, they told her she'd hear back soon. When she left the building, her heart felt light. She didn't know if she'd get the job, but for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful. That evening, she stood by her window, watching the sun go down. The same city that once felt so cold suddenly seemed full of possibility. She thought about how one small act, letting a man and his daughter stay for one night, had led her here. She smiled quietly to herself, unaware that her story was only just beginning, and that the man who had walked into her life on a rainy night was about to change it in ways she could never imagine. The next few days were filled with nervous energy. She couldn't stop thinking about the interview. Every morning she checked her phone again and again, hoping for a message or a call. At night she would lie awake, replaying every question they asked, wondering if she had said something wrong. By the third day, she began to lose hope. Maybe they found someone better, she whispered to herself while pouring coffee at the diner. She tried to stay positive, but disappointment was something she knew too well. That afternoon, while she was taking a customer's order, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She almost ignored it, but something told her to check. It was an unknown number. She stepped into the kitchen and answered quietly. "Hello?" A warm voice replied. "Hi, this is from the office you interviewed at last week. We'd like to offer you the position. Can you start Monday?" For a second, she didn't say anything. She thought she had heard wrong. "Wait, really?" "Yes," the woman said with a small laugh. "Congratulations. We'll email you the details." Her heart raced. "Thank you. Thank you so much." When she hung up, she leaned against the wall, her hands shaking. For the first time in years, things were turning around. She finished her shift with a huge smile, even humming while cleaning the tables. Her co-workers noticed immediately. "What's got you so happy?" One of them teased. "I got a new job," she said, grinning. The next few days went by in a blur. She bought a few cheap office clothes from a thrift store, ironed them neatly, and packed her bag the night before her first day. She couldn't sleep that night, half excited, half scared. When Monday came, she woke up early, fixed her hair, and took the bus downtown. As soon as she stepped into the tall building again, that same mix of nerves and hope filled her chest. At the reception, she gave her name, and the lady smiled. "Welcome aboard. They've been expecting you." A kind woman from HR guided her through everything: the paperwork, her new desk, and the rules. Her workspace was small but neat, right next to a big window with sunlight spilling in. She had never worked in a place like this before. Everyone looked busy but polite, greeting her with smiles. A few hours later, the man who had helped her get the job stopped by her desk. "How's the first day treating you?" he asked, smiling. She stood quickly, nervous. "It's good. I'm just trying not to mess anything up." He laughed softly. "You'll be fine. Everyone here likes people who work hard, not people who pretend to be perfect." That made her relax a little. Throughout the day, she focused on her tasks, filing papers, answering calls, and typing reports. It wasn't easy, but she was determined to prove herself. Every time she made a small mistake, she reminded herself that she was learning, and learning was something she had always been good at. At lunch, she sat alone in the cafeteria, eating a sandwich she had brought from home. She didn't mind. Watching people chat and laugh made her smile. For once, she didn't feel like an outsider. She felt like she belonged somewhere. Later that afternoon, the man passed by again. "We're having a small team dinner on Friday," he said casually. "You should come. It's nothing formal, just everyone relaxing after work." She hesitated. "I don't know if I'll fit in," he smiled. "Trust me, you'll be fine. Besides, Lily would love to see you again. She keeps asking when she'll get to see Miss A." That made her laugh. "In that case, I guess I can't say no." By Friday, she had settled a bit more into her new job. Her coworkers started talking to her, showing her small tricks to make things easier. She learned quickly, always polite and grateful. Everyone liked her kindness. It wasn't something they saw often in the busy world of business. When Friday evening came, the dinner was held at a cozy restaurant near the river. She arrived on time, feeling slightly nervous again, but as soon as she saw familiar faces, she relaxed. Lily ran up to her and hugged her tightly. "You came," the little girl said excitedly. "Of course I did," she replied, smiling. "I couldn't miss seeing you." The dinner was simple: good food, light conversation, laughter. She listened more than she spoke, enjoying the warmth around her. She learned that many of her coworkers admired the man she had helped that rainy night. He wasn't just a manager. He owned the company. That realization made her pause. She had no idea. He had never mentioned it. Later that night, as they stood outside, she looked at him curiously. "You never told me you were the boss," he smiled quietly. "It didn't seem important at the time. You helped me because you have a kind heart, not because of who I am." That meant more than you realized. She didn't know what to say. For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence, watching the lights shimmer on the river. Over the next few weeks, life changed for her in small but meaningful ways. She woke up every morning feeling hopeful instead of worried. Her paychecks were steady, and she finally managed to pay her rent on time. She even started saving a little each month, something she had never been able to do before. Sometimes she would take a small bus ride to visit Lily, who adored her like family. They would bake cookies together or paint, laughing for hours. The little girl would often say, "You're my favorite grown-up, Miss A." And every time she heard it, her heart melted. One weekend, while they were painting, Lily looked up and asked, "Did you know Daddy says you're the kindest person he's ever met?" She laughed shyly. "He's just being nice." "No," Lily said seriously. "He really means it." That night when she got home, she sat by the window with a cup of tea thinking about those words. She had never thought of herself as special. She had just done what felt right. But maybe sometimes doing the right thing was what made people special. Months passed and her life slowly found rhythm. She became good at her job, people respected her, and she even started taking evening classes to learn computer skills. The man often checked in on her progress. offering advice but never treating her like she owed him anything. He simply wanted her to grow. One day, while working late, she noticed him sitting alone in the conference room looking thoughtful. She hesitated before knocking on the door. "You okay?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Just thinking about how life changes so quickly. A few months ago I was stranded on a rainy night and now here we are." She nodded. "Yeah, life has a funny way of surprising us." He leaned back in his chair. "You know that night when you let us in? I was tired, frustrated, and honestly a little lost. Not just physically. I was losing touch with what really matters." She tilted her head. "And what's that?" "People," he said softly. "Real people. Not deals or meetings or money. Just kindness. You reminded me of that." Her eyes softened. "You didn't have to thank me for that night. You already did more than enough," he smiled. "Maybe. But I think helping you helped me too." Their friendship grew quietly from that moment. There was no romance, no grand gestures, just a genuine bond built on mutual respect and gratitude. He often invited her to join community projects his company sponsored, helping local families and shelters. She enjoyed it deeply. It gave her a sense of purpose beyond herself. One afternoon, during one of those projects, she met a group of children who reminded her of her younger self. Curious but uncertain, hopeful yet scared of disappointment. She spent hours teaching them small skills, listening to their stories. Watching their faces light up filled her with a warmth she hadn't felt in years. After the event, he approached her with a thoughtful smile. "You're good with them. Have you ever thought about doing community work full-time?" She shook her head. "I wouldn't even know where to start." He looked at her for a moment. "Maybe I can help with that." She didn't know what he meant then, but something in his tone made her believe it wasn't an empty offer. That night, she walked home slowly, the cool wind brushing her face. Her phone buzzed with a message from her landlord. It was a simple reminder about rent, but for the first time it didn't make her heart race. She had already paid it. She smiled, realizing how far she'd come. She sat on her couch staring at the small photo she had taken with Lily and her father at the community event. They looked happy, relaxed, like a little family. She whispered to herself, "It's strange, isn't it? How one small act of kindness can change everything." The rain started again outside, just like that night months ago. She listened to the sound of it against the window and smiled. Somewhere deep down she knew this wasn't the end of her story. It was only another beginning. That morning started like any other for Aliyah, except the air felt heavier. She hadn't slept much the night before. The landlord's words from yesterday still echoed in her head. "You have 3 days or I'll have to rent the place to someone else." She sat quietly on the small edge of her bed, her hands covering her face. The room was dim, the light bulb flickering weakly above her, and the only sound was the soft ticking of the old clock on the wall. She had been trying to think of a way out, but no ideas came. Her savings were gone. The tips from the diner barely covered food. She had already sold her old TV, and the little jewelry her mother had left her years ago. There was nothing more to sell. She looked at the tiny shelf near her bed where a small drawing hung, a little stick figure drawing that Lily, the man's daughter, had made before they left. It said in uneven letters, "Thank you, Miss A." Just looking at it brought a small smile to Aliyah's tired face. She missed that little girl's laugh, the way she held her hand so trustingly as if they had known each other forever. She wondered how they were doing now. The man, David, had promised to keep in touch, but she hadn't heard anything. Not that she expected to. He seemed like someone just passing through, kind, but probably gone back to his own busy life. Still, something about him had stayed in her mind. The way he looked at her house that night with quiet thoughtfulness. The way he listened when she spoke. There had been something different about him, though she couldn't quite tell what. A knock on the door pulled her out of her thoughts. She frowned, standing up quickly. No one ever visited her. For a moment she feared it was the landlord again, here earlier than promised. She opened the door slowly. A man in a black suit stood outside, holding a large envelope. He looked professional, serious, but not unkind. "Miss Aliyah?" he asked politely. "Yes," she said softly, gripping the doorframe. "I was asked to deliver this to you." He held out the envelope. There was no expression on his face that revealed anything. She hesitated but took it. "Who sent this?" "I was instructed not to say," he replied with a small bow of his head. But you'll know once you read it." Before she could ask anything else, the man turned and walked away, stepping into a black car parked near the corner. The car drove off smoothly, leaving behind a faint trail of dust on the narrow street. Aaliyah stood there for a moment, her heart pounding. She shut the door and sat down, staring at the envelope. Her name was neatly written on the front, and the handwriting looked careful, almost elegant. She slid her finger under the seal and pulled out a letter and a folded paper. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The letter began simply, "Dear Aaliyah, I hope this letter finds you well. You may not remember me, but my daughter Lily and I will never forget you. You welcomed us into your home when we had nowhere to go. That night changed something in me. I saw what true kindness looks like, the kind that asks for nothing in return. What you didn't know is that I am the owner of a small construction company. I don't usually share this with strangers, but you were never just a stranger. You were someone who reminded me what generosity really means. I wanted to thank you properly, not just with words. Please accept the enclosed check and the card with my assistant's contact. If you are willing, I would like to offer you a position at my company. A stable job where your honesty and compassion will truly matter. You don't owe me anything. You've already given me and my daughter more than you know. With respect and gratitude, David." Aaliyah's eyes filled with tears before she even reached the end of the letter. Her hand shook as she unfolded the paper that had come with it. It was a check. Her breath caught when she saw the amount. It wasn't just a little help. It was life-changing. Enough to pay her rent, clear her debts, and start fresh. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady her heartbeat. For a moment, she sat completely still, staring at the letter as tears rolled down her face. She whispered softly, "Is this real?" She had no way of knowing what to say or even what to feel. Gratitude, disbelief, fear, all mixed inside her. She stood up, pacing the room, reading the letter again and again to be sure it wasn't some mistake. But the more she read it, the more she realized it wasn't. This was real. After a few minutes, she grabbed the small phone she kept for emergencies and dialed the number listed in the letter. A woman answered on the second ring. "Hello, this is Patricia. How can I help you?" My name is Aaliyah," she said, her voice unsteady. "I received a letter and check." "From David?" The woman's tone immediately warmed. "Oh, Miss Aaliyah, we've been expecting your call. Mr. David asked us to assist you whenever you were ready. Would you like to come to the office tomorrow morning? He would like to see you in person." Aaliyah froze. "He wants to see me." "Yes," Patricia said kindly. "He said it's important." Aaliyah agreed quietly and hung up. She sat on the bed again, her mind spinning. After everything, the struggles, the nights of hunger, the endless worry, she never thought something good would find her like this. That night, she barely slept. She ironed her only decent outfit 3 times. Even though the fabric had faded and the collar was frayed, she cleaned her shoes with an old cloth and tried to tame her hair as best she could. The next morning, she took the bus across town to the address in the letter. The ride felt long, but her heart kept her awake the whole way. When she stepped off the bus, she looked up. The building before her was tall and bright, made of glass and steel, the kind of place she'd never imagined entering. She stood at the entrance, taking a deep breath, then walked in. The receptionist smiled politely and led her upstairs. When the elevator doors opened, she saw a wide office with floor-to-ceiling windows and the sound of gentle music playing in the background. And there he was, David, standing by the window looking out over the city. He turned as soon as he heard her footsteps. The same calm, kind eyes she remembered from that rainy night looked back at her. "Aaliyah," he said, smiling warmly. "I was hoping you'd come." For a moment, she couldn't speak. She just looked at him, still half unsure if she was dreaming. I didn't know what to say," she finally whispered. "You don't have to say anything," he replied softly. "You already did enough that night." Lily suddenly ran out from the side room and rushed to hug her. "Miss A?" the little girl shouted. "Daddy said we'd see you again." Aaliyah laughed through her tears, hugging the child tightly. That warmth she had missed filled the room again. David invited her to sit, and they talked for a long time. He told her about his company, how he started it from nothing, and how lately he had been searching for people who cared about more than just money. He wanted someone to help lead a small community project, building safe homes for families in need. "I can't think of anyone better than you," he said sincerely. Aaliyah's eyes widened. "Me? I don't know much about business." "You know compassion," he said.
That's rarer than any skill. She didn't know how to respond.
Everything felt surreal. The elegant office, the view, the opportunity. But deep inside, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. They spent hours discussing the project, and before she left, David handed her a small folder with details about her new position. Her name was written on the top in bold letters. It looked strange, yet beautiful, printed on something official. When she left the office that day, the sun was bright and the air felt lighter than it had in years. She walked slowly down the street, the letter clutched in her hand, smiling to herself. That night, when she got home, she looked around her tiny apartment and realized she was no longer trapped by it. Soon she would move somewhere new, somewhere safe. She sat by the window, watching the city lights shimmer, and whispered softly, "Thank you." She didn't know that her small act of kindness would ever lead to this moment. But deep down she understood now. Life has its own way of circling back. The good you give doesn't vanish. It just waits for the right time to return. The next morning she woke up with a calm heart. For the first time in a long time, she didn't dread tomorrow. She smiled, ready to begin. The next chapter of her life, one she had unknowingly written the night she opened her door to a stranger and his little girl. The morning sun slipped through the tall windows of Alia's new apartment, filling the small living room with a golden glow. She stood near the window, holding a cup of tea in her hands, quietly watching people walking below. It had been a few weeks since she started her new job, and every day still felt a little unreal. She had gone from barely surviving to finally living with a sense of purpose. Her apartment wasn't fancy, but it was clean and warm. There was a little balcony with potted plants that she took care of before leaving for work. The kitchen smelled like fresh coffee most mornings, and for the first time in years, her fridge wasn't empty. Sometimes she would sit at the small dining table and think about how quickly everything had changed, how one night of kindness had led to all this. At work, everyone treated her with respect, something she wasn't used to before. Her job at the company was simple at first, helping organize community events and assisting with new housing projects. But as the days went on, David saw how dedicated she was and gave her more responsibilities. He would often stop by her desk to check how she was doing, not as a boss, but more like a mentor who genuinely cared. One afternoon, as she was reviewing some reports, Lily ran into her office giggling. "Miss A, Daddy said I can help you today." The little girl shouted happily. Alia laughed, putting aside her papers. "Oh, really? What are you going to help me with?" Lily looked very serious for a moment, then pointed to the box of papers on the floor. "I can organize these." Alia smiled. "That sounds like the perfect job for you." She watched as Lily sat cross-legged on the floor, stacking papers in her own messy way, humming to herself. It reminded Alia of the rainy night when they first met. Back then the girl was cold and scared. Now she was laughing and glowing with happiness. Seeing her like this filled Alia's heart with warmth. When David came by to pick up Lily, he saw the two of them sitting together laughing over a pile of paper clips. He smiled quietly from the doorway before stepping in. "I see my best employee has some competition," he teased. Alia laughed. "She's doing pretty well. Might take my job soon." Lily giggled proudly. "Daddy, I'm helping Miss A." David nodded. "That's my girl. And Miss A, thank you for always making her feel so loved." Alia shook her head. "You don't need to thank me. She makes the days brighter for everyone." Moments like that became common. Some evenings after work, David would invite her to join them for dinner. They would sit around the table sharing stories and laughter. It was simple, but it felt like family, something Alia hadn't had in a long time. Despite her new life, Alia never forgot where she came from. One weekend, while organizing files, she saw a list of new community projects and noticed one located near her old neighborhood. Her heart ached as she thought of the people still struggling there, living the same kind of life she had barely escaped. She went to David's office and asked if she could help with that project personally. He looked at her with interest. "Are you sure? That area can be challenging to work in." "I'm sure," she said firmly. "I grew up there. I know what those people need. I want to help them the way you helped me." David smiled softly. "Then it's yours to lead." That project became Alia's passion. She spent her days talking to families, listening to their worries and finding ways to improve their homes and surroundings. She helped set up small food programs and arranged free skill workshops for women. Her story spread quietly among the people, not because she told it, but because they saw her kindness and effort. They saw someone who truly understood their pain. One afternoon, an older woman from the neighborhood approached her and said, "You remind me of how people used to be, kind without expecting anything back. We need more hearts like yours." Aaliyah smiled, a little embarrassed. "I just want to make things better." And she meant it. As the months passed, the project began to grow. The company built safe, affordable housing for several families. The streets that once looked broken started to look alive again. Children played outside, neighbors helped each other, and laughter returned to places that had long been quiet. Every time Aaliyah saw a family move into a new home, she felt a joy she couldn't describe. One evening, David invited her and a few team members to a small gathering at his home. It was a celebration for the completion of their latest project. The house was beautifully decorated with lights, and music played softly in the background. Everyone laughed, ate, and shared stories. As the night went on, David raised a glass and said, "I want to take a moment to thank someone very special, someone who reminded me that compassion still exists, even when life is hard. Aaliyah, you've done more than any of us could imagine. You've not only changed lives, you've changed the way we see people." Everyone clapped, and Aaliyah felt tears forming in her eyes. She didn't like attention, but in that moment she felt proud of what she had done, proud that she had turned her struggles into something meaningful. Later, as the guests began to leave, David walked her to the door. "You know," he said quietly, "when I first met you, I thought I was the one being helped. But it turns out you helped me more than I helped you. You reminded me to look at life with heart again." Aaliyah smiled. "You gave me a chance. That's something I'll never forget," he nodded. "Sometimes it just takes one small act of kindness to start something bigger. You proved that." As she walked home that night, the cool breeze brushed against her face and the city lights sparkled above her. She thought about her old apartment, the rainy night, the moment she opened her door to strangers. It all felt like a lifetime ago. When she got home, she placed Lily's old drawing, the one that said, "Thank you, Miss A," on her bedside table. It had faded a little over time, but it still meant everything to her. She smiled and whispered, "You're welcome, sweetheart." The next morning, she woke up early and looked out the window at the sunrise. She no longer felt like the poor girl who once worried about her next meal. She felt strong, free, and full of hope. Her heart was peaceful, not because of money or success, but because she finally understood what life was about: helping others, giving kindness, and never letting hardship steal your humanity. Weeks turned into months, and Aaliyah continued her work with dedication. She became a respected part of the company and was often invited to speak at community events. People admired her story, not because of how she struggled, but because of how she kept her heart open through it all. One day, after finishing a meeting, she walked outside and saw a young woman sitting by the bus stop holding a small child. They looked tired, worried, just like David and Lily had once looked. Aaliyah didn't think twice. She walked over and smiled. "Hey," she said gently, "are you two okay?" The woman hesitated, then nodded weakly. "Our bus didn't come. We've been here for hours." Aaliyah looked at the child, who was half asleep in her mother's arms. "Come on," she said softly. "You can stay with me tonight." "It's getting cold." The woman's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" Aaliyah smiled. "I'm sure. Someone once did the same for me." That night, as she made them dinner and watched the little boy eat quietly at the table, Aaliyah felt a deep sense of peace. Life had come full circle. What she had given years ago was now being passed on again, and that was how her story truly began. Not with luck, not with wealth, but with a single act of kindness that rippled through lives and never stopped. Sometimes, she would still visit the place where she once lived. She would stand on the same street, remembering the rain, the sound of footsteps, and the knock on her door that changed everything. It reminded her that miracles don't always arrive wrapped in gold or fame. Sometimes they come soaked in rain, holding a child's hand, waiting for someone kind enough to open the door. Aaliyah had opened that door once, and in doing so, she had opened her own heart to a future brighter than she ever dreamed.